Rico Muhammad and Chuck Snow, but this week it's Bruce Outridge and Chuck Snow because Rico is playing truck driver somewhere tonight and having one heck of a bad time doing it. Although he's a great truck driver, he's just circumstances, as everybody knows out there, they do happen. You know, trucks break down, shippers aren't ready, receivers don't want to take you off. All those things happened to Rico in the last week. So, Bruce, how are you, man? I haven't spoke to you in ages.
I'm doing well. I think I hope you're recording this for the crash and burn because that's exactly what seems to be happening. I'm doing great. Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out which camera. So I'm going. Okay, so I'm.
You're looking good. Whatever camera you're using, you're looking a lot better than I am.
I'm trying to, because it's in a different direction than I know. So I'm just trying to. Are we on Facebook and all of that at the same time?
You're on all that. You're famous. Like if you weren't famous until this moment, you are famous now.
Okay, I'm trying to find it so I can see it on Facebook. Anyway, keep going. We're on. As long as we're on, that's all that matters.
Well, yeah. And Rico will hopefully be joining us a little bit later.
What's he got?
Find a place to park his truck and run in and join us.
Has he got a Alabama or something? What is he doing?
He's putting out fires like always. Like you know what? It's not really trucking; it's really firefighting most of the time. You know.
I think that's for most people. Yeah. Well, hopefully he's doing well.
No rush. That's how our industry goes. You know, it's either boredom or terror.
Both in the same day.
Both in the same minute, man.
Well, it's good to be on with you guys. I haven't been on for a while, so it's good to be on. Glad things are going well, and I'm just trying to figure out how to share this around, but I haven't figured out how to do that yet, so I will.
Well, I'm sure if anybody will figure it out, it will be you.
Well, I'm waiting for it to pop up. That's why I haven't seen it pop up in my notifications, and I can share it from there. So I think I might need to go to the Rates and Lanes podcast page because I'm sure there is a Rates and Lanes. I know I've signed up. I want to know what's going on, when it's going on, and why it's going on.
Well, getting away from the technical stuff, there's a lot of stuff going on in our industry. We've got carriers going broke. We've got brokers going broke. We've got customers going broke. We've got, it's hell out there. It really is.
It is.
We've gone from, and I think, Bruce, I can probably speak for you. You've been in this game a long time as well. And you know darn well that, with continuous growth and nonstop growth and things are too good, you're going to have a change in seasons. And that's what we've got.
That's right. Yeah. I was at a TCA not too long ago. They had a presentation up here in Brampton. I went, so it was interesting to hear from the U.S. side what's going on. So you don't always get that information. And yeah, things are pretty tough for. I think a lot of carriers are sweating right now. I know a lot of the small guys are really having some problems, and of course the big guys, when they see a slowdown, they just start to get nervous.
Well, no, you know what? I have to tell you, the big guys aren't having an easy go of anything either because they've got the same issue as the little guys in a lot of ways, except that theirs is much bigger, and it's easier sometimes as a little guy with one or up to 10 trucks to be able to change lanes than it is a great big guy that's dedicated to one industry that may have gone soft. It's pretty hard when you have hundreds of trucks or dozens of trucks. It's not as easy, and of course their expenses are much bigger.
Yeah, no, that's the case for a lot of them. I know it's a real slowdown here up in Canada. I guess the U.S. is the same.
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, Bruce, I think that the Canadians held on a little bit longer this time than our friends down in the U.S. I think they actually felt it first, but our guys are certainly they're feeling it all the time, and they've got all sorts of things to battle here that I think our American counterparts don't. The cost of fuel here is crazy.
Cost of everything here is crazy.
Yeah, no, it's just we have the cost of fuel has been totally insane. And then the cost of everything else and the freight rates are no different. In some cases, they're worse. And we don't even have the flexibility where an American guy, let's just say, I'm going to use for example, he's based out of Buffalo. If there's no freight out of Buffalo and things are real slow, he can deadhead 200 miles to Cleveland or Pittsburgh perhaps and pick up something that's a lot better than what he's got available in his or her backyard. A Canadian guy that's based in Toronto or based in the Niagara area, he doesn't have that luxury of going down 200 miles and picking up a load in Cleveland that's going to get him to California.
Right. So, yeah, I think a lot of companies have changed. It was always strategically your outbound haul was your biggest. Usually that's your contract haul, and then whatever you're getting back. But I hear it's kind of switched a little bit. I don't know if you've heard the same thing that some are taking whatever they can to get out to get that decent haul back.
Yeah, that's what always happens. Like I've seen this go on for decades. All of a sudden, your outbound slows down. Okay. So you can't get out to get that load back.
Right.
That's coming back from, let's say, Texas or wherever. So now you've got to work that much harder to get down to get that load. And people are willing to pay more because there's no Canadian trucks down there. And the Americans go, well, I don't want to take a load up to Canada. My God, there's nothing out of there. If I have to cross coming back, if I've got to go through Detroit to take a load back to Chicago, and there's nothing out of Toronto, and I have to travel, 240 miles empty to get to Detroit, I don't want to do that, especially in winter.
Yeah.
So, that's what we're up against.
What do you see for? I don't know. Did you have a topic for tonight, or are we just rolling like we normally
do?
We're
rolling like we always do because there's not. You know what? There's so much, and you are. So much, and you're so broad spectrum. That's why I was hoping to maybe get a 15-minute huddle time before the show. One of the things that is bothering the hell out of me about the industry up here in Canada, not so much in the U.S. It's because it's a different beast. But I am ticked at our federal government. They have done nothing. And it's been about 18 months since I sold my shares in Traffics. And just prior, probably the last year, I was raising hell with politicians at the federal level to do something about Driver Inc. And I got to tell you, I never saw a bunch of overpaid people want to do less.
I know. Rico right now is trying to get his truck parked. He's going, those two Canadians are talking politics on my show. Poor guy's going, I shouldn't have let them have the microphone.
Exactly. And this isn't, you know what? I'm trying not to make this a political thing, but it is. And it's really, really unfair for the carriers out there that want to operate legally. But, we have, like when you operate legally, you've got what we call the burden cost. Okay. And that's your workman's safety insurance and your unemployment and Canada pension, all that. This federal government says you have to cover. That's 36%. And, my last days of Traffics, I was offering at that time, because the market was hot, $1 a mile for company drivers.
Right. Wow.
And I had several guys call me and say, no, I'm not interested in working for $1 a mile if you're taking, if I have to get burden taken off. If you're not going to pay me as a company, there's no way. I'm better off to work for 60 cents a mile and be paid as my own company.
Are those the same guys that were recently on the news screaming how they didn't get their money for let's see how many weeks?
You know what? Sure. Yes, they are.
to go. And I find it's the same guys. And it's funny because I just wrote an article on this of guys not doing their homework. They exactly what you just said. They would rather go for 60 cents a mile thinking they never have to pay. Even self-employed, I can tell you, as a self-employed person, you still have to pay taxes. They still come and get you. So that's
of course.
is not, and that's if you have decent write-offs to write it off. If you're that Driver Inc. model, you got nothing to write off. You're not even writing off your food. So you're better off to be the employee driver. It's $1 a mile. Take off your 30 cents, 36 cents, whatever. I can write my meals off if I'm an employee. I can, I can have some protection should, I won't have to pay for your bumper if I bend it, because as an employee, that's your problem. It may not be right, but it is your problem. If I'm an employee and I'm driving your truck, that's what for you to take care of.
That's right.
The Driver Inc. model, what's happening is they're going, oh, you bent our bumper. Guess what? You owe us $2,000 for the bumper.
Which is totally, you know what?
Yeah.
Where does that stand? It's not legal. It's certainly not legal. You can't do that to an employee. In this case, the employee isn't considered an employee, but I've often wondered, and we actually did it. I think you were on this show one day, and that's got to be, I bet you that's 3 years ago, when I had one of my, temper tantrums and got everybody on this show, including I had a lawyer on, and I think you were on, and I had a journalist on that had written this scathing article, I think in the Toronto Star, and her name was Sarah. And I don't want to show any disrespect to her by trying to pronounce her last name, because it had 800 syllables and not a lot of vowels. But she was, and she had done this scathing article. There had just been one of those carriers, just like the one you're talking about, go under and take a bunch of guys. I think it was called the Freight Barn or something. And they had gone under and done a quick transfer, the whole thing, everything. And the lawyer said, and what his take on it, if I'm not mistaken, was if something happens to that driver and he gets hurt, where is he covered? Like, WSIB is coming after somebody.
Yeah. And that's the problem. They have no protections. And, it's what I find funny. And most of this seems to be happening in the South Asian market, which is unfortunate. I know a lot of good people there.
Yeah, it's great people.
People doing it to their own people because they know.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Like, it's not like it's me ripping them off going, oh, I'm Canadian. I can make a few bucks on you. Here's how I do it. It's people saying, here's where you go. And they're actually hurting them because they're not allowing them to get the proper start in Canada, which is the reason they come here for a better life, from what I'm understanding and from what I see on the news. They're coming here for a better life. And part of that better life is taxes and healthcare and all of that stuff that comes with being a proper citizen of Canada, right?
Well, there seems to be among some people, and it's not just the Southeast Asian, it's some of the Eastern Europeans as well. I've spoken to that just have this attitude of, screw it, where I think up until a while ago, I think immigrants for the most part came here, just like you say, to make a better life and bought in. They wanted to buy a house, and they understood educating children has to come, the cost of that education has to come from paying taxes.
Right.
Healthcare. Where do you think the government gets the money? It's our taxes.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to pay taxes. Okay. Like nobody. I've never met anybody in my life that wants to pay taxes, but it's the cost of doing business.
Right. That's right. Part of living here, we do go to the hospital whenever we need to without having to bring out our wallet necessarily, depending on what it is. Somebody who's not paying into that system and then is still going to the hospital with their family whenever they think they need it is actually robbing us because they're not paying into that system. So where do you see Driver Inc. going for 2024? We just had Stephen Leskowski was at one of our transportation club meetings. And of course, he's always driving down against Driver Inc. And a lot of people are agreeing with him. You're agreeing. I'm agreeing with him. But there's nobody doing anything. Like there's
until You know what? I honestly think not until our federal government changes, nothing will happen because they are very, very concerned about losing. Number one, they're concerned about a revolt.
Yeah.
They're afraid of the militancy that's out there in the trucking community after that, fiasco in Ottawa a couple of years ago, which I was embarrassed for the behavior of those people.
Yeah. That didn't help. That didn't help our light. I mean, and the cause changed. I'm gonna stay away from that because that's a whole kettle of.
I know that's you know what, and
what?
I haven't gone public with very much on that for the same reason because that's a pretty hot topic right now.
Yeah,
and it still is, and there's two sides to it, and you know what? I'll just leave it alone.
Poor Rico won't have a show after we finish with this. It's going to be the political podcast of Canada, and that's not. I don't even talk politics on my show. It's a rule I have, so we're going way farther than I go normally.
It reminds me of a story, and I'm not making this up. Okay, years ago, there was this old man that had a bakery in Kensington Market, right around the corner from where our family business was, and I used to live many years ago. And he went away to Florida, and he trusted his kids to run the business. And the kids had a drug problem. And while the old man was gone, and this business, it was booming, man. There were lineups every morning to buy fresh bread and bagels and stuff. It was right in the heart of Kensington Market in Toronto. And the old man comes home from Florida, and all the equipment has been sold. No sign of the kids, nothing.
You got to wonder who you trust your business to. That's for sure. So
yeah, you know what? If you raise your kids right, you don't have that problem. I heard a great quote recently, which I'll share with you, and I'll share with our listeners. If you raise your children, you will get to spoil your grandchildren. But if you spoil your children, you'll get to raise your grandchildren.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm not sure. I'll have to think about that and decide which one I'm on right now. I've got grandchildren. I got children. I'm just not sure which one I'm probably not raising. They're raising their own.
Well, if your grandkids are coming to you for allowance, then you're raising.
We're not at that point yet. Let's hope we don't get there.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah, it's good. But yeah, what do you see? How do you see things rolling for 2024? I don't know. You're retired. I mean, you're just fixing old trucks. You're probably not even looking at the news.
I am. You know what? I still, obviously I can't have any investments in the trucking industry, other than I've got a couple of trucks that are leased on with Traffics with their drivers. It's a pure lease, and those are coming to fruition. But other than that, really, I think what has to happen first is we need the culling of the herd. In order, we have way too many carriers in North America. I'm not just talking about in Ontario or in Canada. I'm talking about all over the United States and Canada. Way too many people got into it during COVID. A lot of people got into it that had no business being in it. That just didn't know anything about business themselves, itself. And those are the ones that are helping to mess up the market.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, they lived on the spot market.
Right.
Okay, they lived and died by it. And we were preaching on this show every week, stay the hell away from the spot market. It's fickle. It will evaporate when things change. But nobody could believe, especially somebody that just came in. You've got this river of freight, and you just have to go down to the river every time you want whatever you want and just take it. And if you don't know anything else but that river full of freight, you don't know anything. And when these two guys are telling you on their podcast, don't do that, you have a hard time believing them. But that river dries up. It's the first thing to dry up. And the people that either had their own customers or at least had relationships with a handful of brokers, not 100 brokers,
Right.
but a handful of brokers. They're surviving.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to say they're doing great because most of them aren't unless they're specialized.
Yeah, that's what they were saying at TCA, that the pandemic created this false river, as you say, to where people, everybody was ordering everything online, so there was lots of freight as far as that goes, and now people are holding on to their dollars and they're back out shopping and doing what they're. Although I don't think it's gonna. I think it's changed for good though. I was at a real retailer the other day. I was in a store, and I don't go shopping very often, but I was buying a speaker, and I was in one of our technology retailers, and I bought a speaker. I wanted the one they had on sale. That's not the one they had. They gave me another one. They said this is the better model, but the better model didn't have the one feature I needed for my mixer and stuff. So I took it back, and the kid told me to go to his competitor. And I'm going, I don't know if you realize how your job works, but pay you money, your company pays you, and that's how you get employed. He wasn't getting that, I don't think. And I'm thinking, you know what? I've seen this more and more lately too. And I'm going, I don't, you feel sad when you hear the Bay and all of these big stores go out of business. Yeah. But you know what? If you keep sending people online, and everybody's online, a lot of people are not coming back offline once the pandemic. For a while, that was the only way you can get stuff. I still am not crazy about ordering online, but you know what? I could order it and it's here the next day. And that's good for the trucking industry because there's always freight. I'm seeing more Amazon trailers floating around here that I never saw for.
Oh, yeah. Well, I never saw them up until the last 12 months, really. 401,
man. Every other trailer's on Amazon.
If it's not auto parts, it's an Amazon trailer. Now, here's a great question. Russell asked a question. Rico Russell, what percentage of total U.S. Canada freight is on the spot market? You know what? It's very little. It's probably about 5 to 10% right now.
Yeah, but
I would think.
See, the reason it affects so many people is everybody's involved in it. Even the big. The legacy company carriers here have a load brokerage division, are dealing in the spot market, and they may not, they have accounts and stuff too, but they still do that market. So that there's always freight in that spot market, and there's always has been freight in that spot market. Yep. We saw a balloon of it, I think, because of the pandemic. And
there was a shortage of all of a sudden one day. I think it was March 15th, if I'm not mistaken. We all get sent home from work. 25 million people or something in this country end up being housebound, and you've got a computer and you can buy stuff. Okay. And people bought stuff, my God, the Amazon delivery people, which were FedEx and UPS, every time they drove up the driveway, I'd run out. Somebody, knew to talk to. I was just so excited,
Yeah, and they said, "Don't stay away, stay away."
But exactly, I don't want to get a disease. But Bruce, to your to back you up on the Thursday before Black Friday, a friend of mine and I went over to Canadian Tire, just over here in Georgetown, because I needed some tools for my new shop I'm putting together. And usually they have those blowout sales, which they did. They had some really good sales, and we bought some stuff. I was shocked. Now, we went early in the morning, 8:30, but usually that's when people start lining up. And I got to tell you, there were a lot more people around that store wearing red shirts than there were wearing winter coats.
Wow.
There was like nobody in there. We got all the help we needed. Matter of fact, people were just coming up to us saying, "Can we help you with anything?" Because they were looking for something to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
That's good, but it's not good. Now, apparently on the U.S. side, I don't know what the Canadian numbers are, but on the U.S. side, Black Friday was a success.
Probably was. I think people will always buy, especially strategically having it right before Christmas. Everybody's going to get that deal on a Christmas present.
Well, they compared it to last year even, and it was over last year.
Yeah. So, that's good that goods are being sold and people are buying. That's always good for trucking because it means stuff is, but that's not necessarily the high paying price. It's more the other commodities, which, technology might be high to buy, but really there's so much of it. I don't think that's really where someone's building a business hauling TVs back and forth.
No, because you know what? If you look at stuff that's really valuable, that has a value, like look at my iPhone. How many thousands of these things can you put in a 53-foot trailer?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and you know the laptop I'm on now. How many of those can you put in a 53-foot trailer?
Yeah.
You know, it's thousands of them.
I see a lot of people getting into the livestock market. That's where I see a lot of trucks lately that have grown crazy. Like everybody seems to be hauling livestock now. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a total like. Have you ever hauled livestock?
No, it's not. No, I played in steel mostly. Hazmat was my thing. So hazmat, a little bit of steel, some produce, and a lot of dry goods. But
I hauled one load of cows. It was my first time trucking, and and this is like 49 years ago. You could do these things then. Now they would actually lock you up and throw you in jail. But we went out to a place called Kalonsi, Saskatchewan. Now, I had never driven a loaded truck in my life. This is a brand new experience for me. I'm 21 years old, and I went with another guy from the company where I bought the truck, and we unloaded this thing for a company called FMC, this big machine at the potash mine, and then we were sent to the middle of nowhere to pick up a load of cattle, and on a flatbed with wooden sides, rack drop. And I have to tell you, man, it was pretty funny. You could have actually made a movie out of it. There's this grizzled old cowboy waiting for us, and he's loading us up, and we have to stop at a building supply place and get gravel to put on the floor so that the cattle, we had picked up 54 head of cattle, so they would have some footing. And and then the fellow loading us, this old cowboy, said to us, "Have you got a cattle prod? You got a prod?" And I go, "What's a prod?" You know, that's how green I was. Okay, I'm not as green now because I've owned cattle since. So he explained. I said, "No, I don't have one of those." And then he looked at us and he said, "What are you boys going to do if a beef goes down?" I go, "What do you mean if beef goes down?" And he tried to explain, and finally said, "Well, if they fall down, the other ones will trample on. What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "You don't have a cattle prod?" And I go, "No, I don't have a cattle prod." He thinks for a moment, and he said, "Do you have any warm ginger ale?" Now, here we are in the middle of like Nosebleed, Saskatchewan. I mean, like there's not civilization for hundreds of miles, or it seemed like hundreds of miles. And I said, "No, you don't have any warm ginger ale." He thinks for another minute, and he goes, "Okay, here's what you do, boys. If one goes down, then you better pee in her ear." So I said, "What, you know?" And he explained that if a cow goes down, the other ones will trample it to death. And since we didn't have a cattle pod, there's no insurance on them. So here it is, freezing cold out. It's middle of October, somewhere in northern Saskatchewan. And here's Yvonne and I at the side of the road, peeing in a cow's ear.
So when you load them, are they standing the whole time that they're running?
Whole time. They're supposed to be, yeah. But this one cow went down, and we got it up. By the time I got back, we went to the over by the stockyards there in Toronto at St. Clair and Kiel, if you remember where they used to be. And we went there, and I had a broken toe and a broken rib. Wow. Driving a cab over, so that was really hard with a broken rib. And that was it. I decided at that point I didn't think I ever wanted to haul cattle again.
Wow, that's so. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where you had to come from the farm to understand that. Like, I wouldn't even know even green you now, but I always thought that. I guess it's pigs that are always laying down. I thought they just laid on the floor. So I just want. I know that in that area there's no cargo securement. There's nothing. That's what I'm told.
No. Well, have you ever driven a tanker?
I have driven. I haven't driven a tanker, but I've driven. Our van used to have totes in it, so it operates.
Okay.
But the tow,
You know how well, I guess it's the same thing with totes when you're taking a turn, how the truck seems to go. Yeah, and it does. It's the weight.
yeah.
That's what a load of cows is like.
Wow. Yeah, because with chemicals, you have to shift the way that the chemical is. Like if you're trying to upshift, if you're shifting up and it's like sloshing towards the back, you've got some real stress going on.
Right.
You got to shift with the load with chemicals. So I imagine it's an interesting. You see people doing it, and you wonder how does that work?
Yeah, it is difficult. It really is. Now, of course, the automatic trucks are making some things easier, but I think you know what? They were talking about automatic trucks back when I bought my first truck in 1974. They were talking about them, and there were some. There's another question here from the same guy. What percent? How many trucks are competing for this 5% freight? There are probably thousands of trucks competing for that 5% on the load board. Thousands. Yeah. That's where all of your 1 to 10 truck operators are hanging out.
Yeah, and how many of them are trucks, and how many of them are disguised as truck, but they're really load brokers with no trucks, hoping to get that freight and then resell it.
Yes, that's a whole. That's been going on for the 49 years I've been in this business.
They're stepping up. That's what they're saying for the TCA, that they're really monitoring them, and they're kind of getting on the load brokers because there's been so many of them, and a lot of them are not set up properly. I mean, I've got nothing against anybody getting into any business, doing it legitimately the way you're supposed to be doing it, and above board. But I guess they've had so many of them that they're really cracking down. A lot of them are not bonded or whatever. Which, again, for the driver taking the freight, this is the problem is, the owner operator's got all the burden, all the costs, everything, but they're only getting 50% of the rate or whatever the percentage is that's agreed upon. So it's, there's a lot of people taking their pie before, and they have no costs associated to it. The driver inks and, the load brokers are all taking their piece of the pie. They get their 30% or whatever, and then the poor driver has to work with the rest, and he's got all the fuel costs and the reefer costs and the
100%. You know what? It's not a lot of. There are some 30% margins. There's no two doubts about it, but a lot of times it's more in line. For the most part, you're at 10 to 13%.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you got the ones where you're, you may be a little bit higher, but you have to wait 90 days to get paid.
Right.
Your big multinationals, they're like that quite often. Yeah. So you have to take that into consideration. There's not a lot, nobody is moving millions of dollars worth of freight making 30 or 40%. That just there's no load brokerages that get to operate like that. And I know that a lot of people believe that, and there are some, I think at every load brokerage, once in a while gets one where, they really score on that one, but there's lots where you lose money also.
Yeah.
You have a lot of times, especially in produce, you have these customers that demand an all year round price.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to give them a price of, let's say, $8,000 a year from Bakersfield, California to Toronto or to Montreal, whatever it is. Now, sometimes of the year, you may only pay $5,000, but other times you're paying $12,000, and every load you're missing $4,000 that goes out. So, you're not getting a lot of, but there's other stuff where you do make money on that client.
Yeah, and the same thing with the cost. And I think more people are going to be looking into that. There's lots of fuel programs out now where some of these big companies are buying their fuel a year ahead of time. They're not paying.
Yes.
They're paying last year's prices or tomorrow's prices, because they have multiple places where they can deliver the fuel and have it in their tanks. So that's a cost. They figured out their cost for that allotment of fuel, which again, 6 months down the road, the rates have changed. A lot of stuff has changed where it's either impacting that, or so they may have saved if they got a good deal, or they might be hurting themselves because they're still paying high prices for something.
Yeah, exactly. The best one I ever saw for that for little guys was the Fifth Wheel. May they rest in peace. They had a thing called Tank Share,
Yeah.
where we were doing this like 25 years ago. We would buy a tank of fuel, and we could draw it. We could get it delivered to Dorchester or Milton or wherever, and we could draw it from any Fifth Wheel location they had, including North Bay.
Right.
And
So
then if you ran out of fuel,
yeah,
they would just borrow. They would lend you the fuel from one of the other clients for that night or whatever, and they'd call you the next day and say, you know what, you've run out of fuel.
Yeah.
And I remember when the day, as soon as 9/11 happened, I called my salesman, and they actually worked through some, they were working through some fuel brokers. And I remember the one we used to do, there were a couple we dealt with them. They were great. And I remember when 9/11 happened, I thought I was going to be smart and didn't know what to do, and I went out that morning and I bought 2 tanks of fuel. And the guy said, "You sure want to?" I said, "Yes, at least I know how much it is," thinking that fuel could skyrocket. And in the end, it ended up not skyrocketing.
Right. Yeah.
So it took a while, and it didn't go up much, but it didn't, I didn't win anything by doing it, but you never know. But you're right. The larger transport companies, they buy futures a year, 2, 3 years ahead of time, because it's such, it's the sort of commodity that everybody needs. Somebody's on a roll here. Let me read. Did you hear about a recent complaint about 371 and TQL? They refused to provide carrier who hauled how much they made on one particular load. FMCSA got involved and went to TQL office. It turns out TQL makes 45% of what customer paid, and TQL tells everybody that the max they get is 16%. You know what? I don't know about that particular one. Now, maybe they did score on that big one, but there's other ones, I'm sure, where they make 3%. This carrier on this particular load may have somehow gotten wind of how much that load paid. And he felt that, or she felt that they took a unusually large commission. It's free enterprise. They didn't have to take the load.
Right.
That's how you have to look at it. And I don't think that the government has any right to, there he is.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Rico said, "I've had enough of these Canadian boys on here. We're getting."
He came to save the show.
Rico's going, "I have heard enough of this crap about Canada and politics, and I'm." That's what happens when Chuck invites the guests, Rico. You get Canadian guests on here. You're gonna have
man, I tell you, I gotta do better. This 2 weeks in a row, I'm tardy for the party.
Oh. All right, that's right. Someone's got to work hard. Chuck and I are just moseying around doing nothing right now.
So, I heard you guys talking a little earlier. You was talking. Someone had a question about trucks, about spot market freight and things of that nature. And that's one of the big things is if you're working the spot market, ladies and gentlemen, you got to make sure that you have gotten a really good training on whichever load board that you're using, if you're using the 2 big ones, of course, Truck Stop, and of course we always we support DAT heavily over here because our good friend, a good friend of the show, he always comes up was with us last week, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
is a member of DAT, and he's their lead analyst. But either one, I'm not going to say one is better than the other one, but either one that you use, that you already have a subscription to, make sure that you contact their customer service and have them give you an extensive training on how to operate the load board, understanding The key thing is if you're especially going to be working in the spot market, you got to understand load to truck ratios, and both of those load boards offer that. There are different level tiers of each load board. It may be a little bit more expensive to get the more in-depth portion of the load to truck ratios, because sometimes they the way that they kind of gear it, it's a business, of course. They kind of tier it to where it doesn't give you the most how can I say this? It's not like the day of load to truck. Like it may be like a week back, depending upon your level. Now they do have a level that is real time that shows what the load to truck ratios are in that particular market, not just the state, because that's another portion of it. They'll give you a state overview, and then of course each state, depending upon which state that it is, has different markets within that state. So they do have the ability for you to be able to drill down exactly into each particular market within that state, according to your equipment type, which the ones that they cater to primarily. I don't think they have anything for car haulers or tankers or anything like that, but they do have the information available for flatbeds, for dry vans, and for reefers. And if you're going to be working the spot market, you have to understand the load to truck ratios in which particular market that you are in.
Yep.
That is going to be the critical component, because that is the key to you being able to negotiate a fair rate and getting the best rate possible. Of course, understanding how negotiation works. If you've been trucking of any amount of time, and I'm not going to assume that anybody that is listening on has been trucking for I'm going to assume that you may be new to trucking. There's a time of day. There's a sweet spot in the time of day when you can actually get better rates. You have to understand 100%. That.
Yeah.
That afternoon block from about 3 o'clock on, when shippers are getting ready to close and it's getting tight and they need to get a truck in there, and if you know, that's when you can negotiate some of your best rates. Understand, as soon as you know that you're going to be in a particular market, get that truck posted. Don't just go searching for loads and start calling people. You want the broker to call you. Post your truck. If you know that you're going to be in a particular market, post it. If you know that you are going to be in a market like every other day or whatever, you're going to be there on a consistent basis, post your truck, post your equipment. Don't call. You don't want to be the one making the phone calls if you can. If you can get the brokers to call you, that puts you in a little bit more of a leveraged position to be able to entertain and let them shoot out a number first. Don't always be the first one to shoot out a number. You might have a number in mind and they may far exceed the number that you got in mind, depending upon if the load to truck ratios are in your favor. So you got to understand the nuances of negotiating within the spot market and on the spot market. So, and understand that there is, like Bruce and everybody was saying already, there is a ton of people that are participating in the spot market. But if you learn the different nuances, there can be some success had in the spot market. But I caution, I say that with a caveat of, I would prefer, if you could, to develop the relationships so that you're not always in the spot market. So like if you know that you're going to be doing something on a consistent basis, or you are halfway dedicated, or you with some kind of frequency to that particular market, have that conversation with the broker that you want. Hey, how often do you guys have this load? Try to, get conversational and make it as conversational as possible to try to be able to get that relationship started with that broker and or that agent or whoever it is that you're dealing with, and try to deal with that same person on a consistent basis so that you can develop and cultivate that relationship. Ask for that person by name. Always ask for their name. They normally tell you, but always ask for their name. And if you're calling back, ask to speak back to that person. And that way you can kind of start to build that kind of a rapport with them. These are the nuances that's going to help get us through this tough time, because right now it is really a tough time.
Yeah.
And the amount of freight that comes that dribbles into the spot market, it's contracted freight that can't get covered.
Yeah.
And so, and the other thing about trying to get as much information about the load and everything that you can, I may screw this up, so you guys may have to help me. They say you can't have good service cheap, and you can't have cheap service if it's cheap, good, and it may not be fast, but you can't have all three things at once. So you got to understand all of that kind of combines into the negotiating tactic. And you got to understand all those different nuances with that, what comes with it on negotiating in the spot market. That's one of the things that we try to bring a different on this show. We try to bring that realism about what's going on, what's actually going on out here in the spot market, because a lot of times you have a lot of people that talk about this stuff. Of course, Chuck has recently retired, but as they were saying, I'm still in the trenches. I'm still out here operating, negotiating, dealing with brokers on a day in, day out basis, dealing with, sometimes I have to get back hauls and everything of that nature, even though I have a head haul. But even on the backside, maybe even cultivating, doing some research to see if you can get a direct shipper on your back. If you can seal up your whole run on the front side and the back side with direct shippers, that's the bee's knees. That's the holy grail. But but that's where the broker comes in, and you got to understand the business. You got to understand that if you take that on yourself, this is the value that brokers do provide. If you take that on yourself, then you got to understand that you got to service that customer 24/7. That means, I want to take a vacation. Well, your customer still got to be serviced. Do you have broker's authority? Do you have the ability to be able to cover that freight so that when you go on vacation? If not, dealing with a broker may not be such a bad thing, but if you cultivate that relationship with that broker and they know that when you're going to be there, they'll work with you consistently. You can get that freight, and then when you need to take your vacation or your time off, things happen. Hey, the broker got the freight; he got it covered. It's just a communication, and that's that relationship building portion of it. That hey, got something going on. Daughter's graduating, got a wedding to go to. Me and the wife getting ready to take a cruise around the world like Chuck just did.
I waited a long time for that cruise, my friend.
Exactly. You can communicate that with your broker, and you treat that relationship, you cultivate that relationship, and that can be, and they can get that cultivated and happen for you, and it doesn't disrupt the things of the goings on with that particular customer and the broker, and you help cultivate that relationship. So now, that's one less piece of freight that's going to hit that load board. We were just talking about being on the spot market. Well, if you can cultivate that relationship, then that broker knows your schedule and y'all have that rapport. You're on his pocket list now. He got that list right there in his top pocket, as they say. And he's calling you, emailing you. Hey, when did you say you're gonna be back up there again? Okay, I got that load again.
Because they don't want to put those loads on the load board and deal with a new carrier. Do you know what? This is interesting, guys. It costs a broker, especially the big ones. It costs them more because they're bigger. It costs them more to do everything. It costs them a good $100 to add a carrier to the list by the time they vet that carrier for a load.
Well, of course, with the manpower, like you say, the vetting process,
yes,
and especially now, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why relationships and getting with good solid brokers right now is so important with the amount of fraud that is going on in the industry.
Oof.
That's the huge portion, because people, I've heard all kind of crazy things that brokers are requesting now from when they signing somebody up new. Can you send me a picture of you with the truck? And
they want to know, you know what, if they're going to load, if you tell them the name of your company is Crescent Carriers, they want to know that a Crescent Carrier is actually going there. That first of all, Crescent Carrier really has a truck, okay,
right,
with their name on it. Okay, this isn't something that Rico made up in the middle of the night. and they want a picture of that truck. And you can't blame them because so many times there are so many ripoffs every day. Fraud is at a fever pitch now.
Yeah, and I have multiple trailers, so sometimes when they ask me for trailer, I'm like, well, I might be pulling this trailer, I might be pulling that trailer. That throws. They like, whoa, wait a minute, because they're not used to smaller guys having multiple trailers, but unfortunately, I'm in a position where I have multiple trailers, and sometimes I'm switching them out.
Yeah.
And so I have to try to figure out if I'm dealing with a broker on that. Okay, which load of I have to try to figure out a day in advance or whatever. Okay, which trailer am I going to be actually pulling that day? I'll give them both of my trailer numbers, and of course on my insurance, they're both listed on the insurance and everything. So it's just the things that you can do to help differentiate yourself, and the things that you can do to help endear yourself to build that relationship and cultivate that relationship with brokers is a key component. But the other key component to being able to negotiate is understanding that load to truck ratio. And before I start servicing a particular market, I would study. That's why I say go and ask your load board provider to give you a real breakdown and an in-depth tour of all of the products that they offer on their load board services, because I would study that load to truck ratio component to understand where the sweet spot is to be had in the spot market. Some places are better, a hell of a lot better than others, and I would look at that, see how you can go back and grasp how the load to truck ratio is over the course of the entire year, not just for the moment in time that you're looking at. I would want to see how that load to truck ratio, is it a steady? Is it are the peaks and valleys? Where is the sweet spot? If there are peaks and valleys, where is the sweet spot to be had? What number load to trucks? Where if I'm having to work on the spot market, am I still going to be able to get a good rate? Because all is based on, and I know a lot of people, it's based on supply and demand, ladies and gentlemen, and it's based on you don't want to put yourself in a position where you got to be in a race to the bottom.
Well,
that's the key thing.
What prevents you from taking that bottom rate is the data that you can buy now. And if I was even operating one truck, I would have, and I was using the load board, I would buy the Rolls Royce of systems so I could mine that data because it's so valuable.
And understand, go back, and if you happen to have the lower tier load board, I'm gonna give out a little cheat sheet that may help you out. If you don't have the top tier portion of the load board, go watch shows which is one of the reasons why we don't do as much. I know we're called the Rates and Lanes, and we've kind of been kicking around the idea of possibly changing our names. There's somebody out there that came up with a better mousetrap, and they have a hell of a lot more technology and everything behind them than what we have. Go watch Freight Waves. Go watch that in the morning when they have their reports. They give out a ton of information on load to truck ratios, and they also give out tender rejection rates. So there's a ton of information to be had, and that's something that you can watch in the mornings. And if you missed the show, you can go on YouTube. Just go on there, look for YouTube for that particular day. And if you miss it in the morning, I think they come on at like about 9 o'clock in the morning on Eastern Standard Time. If you miss it, just go on YouTube a little bit later, and it's right there on YouTube. You can go and pull that information up and watch that on a daily basis so that you can kind of get abreast as to what's going on in the market. Now, all of that is fine and dandy, but the other key component, which is critical, that everybody has to have, I'm looking at the time, you got to make sure that you understand your numbers, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure that you have done a spreadsheet, that you understand what your cost per mile is, your operating cost, what is your fixed cost, what is your variable cost. Yep. Understanding that number intimately, understanding what that number, what if you're going to accept the load, you always want to try to operate at a profit. Does that mean that every load that you take is going to be profitable? Not necessarily. Sometimes you're going to make a little bit more on the front end, and might have to average that bad boy out across the week. But you got to understand and know what your operating cost is. That's going to keep the key component to being able to try to keep the doors open. And I think that we are in for tough times for at least the next 6 months. That's just my
Or at
humble
least, you
opinion.
know what, Rico, I hope you're right. And this horror show is over in 6 months.
Could
But
be longer, but
I think it's going to be longer until we have to wait until all these new carriers that came in during the pandemic, until a lot of them exit the industry, which they're doing, but there's new ones coming in. Now, my understanding is the new ones coming in, a lot of them are doing the last mile deliveries with smaller trucks.
Yeah, so and Bruce, I apologize. I didn't mean to come in and filibuster or nothing like that, but I wanted to. I heard the conversation going on, and you guys were talking about that, and I was like, man, I need to jump in and get this. You know,
guys, I got to tell you a great story that we had this. We knew this carrier, and what he would do, he would have trucks in Chicago on Fridays, and he would tell the drivers just hang out, and he would post them at 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. And he got, instead of getting $800 at 12 noon for his trucks, he got $1,700 at 4 o'clock.
I'm telling you, that's a little known. You know, if you wait a little bit later in the day, and if the load to truck ratio is in your favor, another key sign to tell that the load to truck ratio is in your favor too, ladies and gentlemen, without even looking at anything. If you post your truck, and if your phone starts to ring uncontrollably, from the moment that you post your truck and you start getting phone calls back to back to back,
that's a honey hole of a fishing spot.
Understand. Now, if you got a relationship with somebody, don't make them grab their ankles too bad.
That's right.
That's part of the relationship, because, as they say, ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. So, so I'm not saying that you can't benefit from hey, okay, but you gotta tell them, you might be able to joke around with them. You might be like, hey, Chuck, now normally, but just because it's you, I'm gonna, instead of hitting you for 2,000, I'm gonna let you do it for 1,000. But
always the one thing I'll leave you with is always make a customer feel special. Okay, you're never ever going to get rich on one transaction,
right?
And you're never going to get rich on one customer. But the one thing is, every customer you have, every broker you have, treat them special. Let them know that they're the most important thing in your world, and they will look after you.
Yeah.
And understand, and I'm gonna say this and get ready. I'm gonna give Bruce. I'm gonna let you have the last word before we wrap up. I appreciate you taking time out to come on and help Chuck out, especially since I was indisposed for the moment. But
we didn't know he was going to be indisposed, by the way.
But one key thing, ladies and gentlemen, that you got to understand with when things are in your favor, say it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But the biggest thing is, don't be afraid, especially understanding your numbers. If you understand and know your numbers, and try to make sure that you get as close to your operating numbers as you need to get, maybe even try to get a little bit above that, because I always try to, the market is only going to bear so much, but understand, if you got yourself priced properly within the marketplace, sometimes you got to make sure that you say that on your negotiating tactics, because I think that a lot of people have gotten so accustomed to people that don't negotiate at all, and the best negotiating that they know how to do, is that the best you can do? Is that all you? Can you give me a little bit more? Or they'll only shoot for $100 more than what, if there's a load posted for 600, do you think you can do it for 700? No. Stop. Understand that. Trust yourself. Here's the caveat: brokers don't set rates.
The market does.
Carriers have the ability to set rate due to the market, but you have so many carriers out here that don't understand the market that they're willing to accept whatever. At the end of the day, that's still your truck. That's still your trailer. You know, as a rule of a day, you got to understand what it costs to operate your truck for the day. If you're not getting miles, what is your daily cost of operation? What does it cost to operate it for a day? So, you know, breaking that thing all the way down to what do I need for the truck to make for the day? And if you get those numbers and have yourself intimately involved with those numbers to know what those look like and what it needs to be, don't be scared to stand on that. Trust yourself. Trust yourself, and things will work out for you. Things will work out for you. I'm not as long as you're being reasonable and understanding, cutting your costs and getting your costs down as much as possible, but understanding that if you price yourself properly within the marketplace, there's definitely somewhere in there. But the only thing the broker can say is no. But there's always another load coming. But if you are reasonably priced within the marketplace, there's freight out there that you can move and still stay profitable. But just understand your numbers and make sure that you're operating, try to operate as profitably as you can be. And with that being said, Bruce, I'm going to give you the last word before we wrap this puppy up and get up out of here for the night.
I got to get you in earlier in the show, man, if you're going to speak for a half hour at the end. It's your show. You do what you got to do, man. It's your show.
I think we should open up a church in the South, man.
The Southern Baptist came out of it.
It's like he had so much to say. He just said, look, I'm going to go. And like, that's it.
But he was wound up, you know.
I appreciate you having me on. All that stuff you're talking about is exactly correct. And it's what I call it positioning. And if you do that properly, and, you know, Rico, you're saying, who's in the truck? I'm not in the truck anymore, but our business still runs the same way.
Right.
We don't take certain work. We know exactly where our pricing is for our services. And if someone is way below that, we just say, sorry, we can't handle it. And yeah, sometimes you might have to take a load that's less, but if you know where you are and people know where you are, you will always look good. You won't be changing your prices every month. You'll be just running steady because you know your numbers. When it's slow like this, when you're at year end like we are, is the time to figure out your numbers as a business. Go through all of your stuff. You should know, we've been in business 17 years and there's still expenses. We went through all of our stuff, my wife and I, and said, we don't need that. I'm still buying stuff that I really didn't need. When you're in business, sometimes you get caught up in getting business and you forget that you're not necessarily being profitable by having more business. Maybe you just need to slow down, cut some numbers, and stay with the people who are supporting you all year. So
say that again, Bruce. Say that again. Say that part again about you may need to slow down by getting more business. You may say that.
Okay, so what a lot of people in business do is they keep trying to get more business. If you look at your numbers, for the last 3 years, our company has made the same money every year. Pandemic or not, we made this, except for the 1 year that was really bad. But for the other years, we've made the same number. But we don't have any more money. We've got no more profits. So when you start looking at it, you go, well, geez, Bruce, you bought $2,000 worth of baseball caps that you gave away, and you bought this and you bought that. When you start looking at your numbers, you see that. So instead of going to get more work, start working with your numbers and get more profit. And profit and work are two different things. You guys know that. Yeah. So if people start looking at that, you don't necessarily need to have all the work. If you've got enough to cover your lanes and you know what your numbers are and you know that the loads you're taking are at that certain point where you're at least working above where you should be, if you've got a good work and you're rolling, that's what you want to do. And you don't need to go and be getting more. People think, oh, I'm going to get 3 more trucks. That doesn't necessarily make you more profitable having 3 more trucks. So if you're not profitable with 1 truck, don't get 2 more. Work with that 1 truck first. But really, sometimes it's best to slow down, cut your numbers, and increase your profits, not go out and get.
Absolutely, Bruce. Well, Bruce, thank you again for coming on to the show, being so gracious with your time. We definitely appreciate you. Chuck Snow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Before you go, Chuck, let Bruce tell the people where they can find you and find your show. And and we'll definitely try to throw a link up in the description a little bit later.
We're all over. I've already shared this to our page, but people can go to leadpedalpodcast.com is where you can find our podcast, and you can find all of our other stuff because we got a lot going on there. And happy holidays to everybody. Be safe out there. Let's treat each other better for 2024. That's my goal. My podcast, I am so tired of trolls and crap and everybody negative against everybody. Let's work together and make our industry better. We all know that it's a great industry. That's why we're in it. Let's make it better. Let's all start working together the way we're supposed to. And let's have a good 2024.
You know what? 100%, man. Great wish for this year or next year. Thank you.
Absolutely. Chuck?
Yes. Anybody needs any help with anything, please send me an email with your phone number to chucksnow280@outlook.com.
Good deal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you guys for taking time out of your schedule to join us. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took a little time to hang out with us here on the Racing Lanes podcast, and we're always eternally grateful for you doing so. For my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow, for our guest, Mr. Bruce Outridge, I'm Rico Muhammad. This has been the Racing Lanes podcast. Stay safe out there, everybody. God bless you. Good night, and keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise.
Catch you on the flip-flop.
See you guys. Thanks very much. Happy holidays.
Thanks for joining us.
Have a good one.
Have a good one.
Appreciate it.